Have you ever looked at those perfect gay couples on social media and wondered, why did my relationship fail? Well, I've got news for you. Those picture perfect posts are hiding something. Today, we're diving into the real reasons gay love falls apart. These are the reasons that nobody talks about, including one that might completely change how you see your own relationship struggles. Let's start with how straight couples have this ready-made relationship template. And I'm not just talking about the obvious timeline of date, moving, marriage, house, kids. I'm also talking about those unwritten rules of how men and women are supposed to act in relationships. Who makes the first move? Who plans the dates? Who's supposed to be more emotional? Who's expected to propose? All these gender role scripts that straight couples can follow, even if they choose not to. Now, some people might say, just take that template and apply it to two men. But that's where things get complicated. When both partners are men, who's supposed to follow which role? Or should we throw out those roles completely? And if we do, what do we replace them with? Relationships are complicated enough, so having these guidelines already in place of how the relationship should start, how it should be managed, how it should escalate over time, and what to expect, all this makes things so much easier to navigate. But not for us. When we as gay men are starting a relationship, we need to start from scratch. When we were kids, nobody showed us a model of a gay relationship. And even now, if we open social media, it isn't helpful either. On social media, we mostly see these perfectly curated highlight reels that have nothing to do with how life as a gay couple really looks like. It's either those impossibly aesthetic morning routines where both partners look magazine-ready right at breakfast, or those viral dance duets in matching outfits, or yes, those endless vacation photos of gym couples on beaches. Sure, it all looks great on camera, but there's a huge disconnect between these perfectly curated moments and the reality of a long-term relationship. Oh, and where are all the different types of gay relationships? The couples who aren't both gym bros, or the ones dealing with age gaps, or cultural differences, or different coming out journeys. The ones figuring out how to blend families or navigate long distance. These stories exist, but they're not as fun to post on Instagram or TikTok, so we rarely see them. So we end up having to write our own rules. How do we handle finances when there's no traditional provider role? When there's the right time to merge friend groups, or if we want kids, who's going to be the biological father? These aren't just random questions. They're the building blocks of our relationships that we have to figure out through trial and error. And here's the tricky part. Without these blueprints or realistic examples to learn from, many of us end up either copying things from straight relationships that don't quite fit, or just winging it entirely. In any case, if we end up copying or if we improvise as we go, we can get lost. We start doubting ourselves. Are we doing this whole relationship thing right? Now, before we talk about how growing up gay can mess up our relationships, a quick reminder. Every week in my private newsletter, I share insights and honest conversations about the challenges of gay dating, relationships, and personal growth. Check out the link in the video description. As gay men, many of us grew up closeted. We had to hide our true identity and our true wants and needs from everyone around us, even from our family and our closest friends. Think about what that really means. I know for years, I trained myself to filter everything I say, every story about who I liked, every conversation about my future, every discussion about relationships. I had to carefully edit myself, watch the pronouns I use, and monitor my expressions, even control my body language. And I know I'm not the only one. We basically became experts at hiding our feelings. And here's the thing. When you spend your teenage years and early 20s perfecting the art of not expressing yourself, it becomes your default setting. It's like we developed this emotional firewall that was great for protection back then, but now it's getting in the way because a relationship needs the exact opposite of what we trained ourselves to do. It needs openness. It needs us to express our needs, our fears, our desires, all those things we spend years learning how to hide. When things get emotionally intimate, maybe during where is this going talks or discussing issues in bed, you might notice yourself doing what worked for years, switching topics, staying surface level without revealing your real thoughts, or making jokes or getting distant. But those old protection strategies, now they are relationship killers. And this isn't just about the big conversations. It's about the small everyday moments too. Being able to say, I need more attention, or I'm feeling insecure, or even just, I had a rough day and I need a hug. These seem simple, but for many of us, they feel terrifying because they're so vulnerable. But here's why that matters so much. Nobody is a mind reader, good luck with that, and your partner shouldn't have to be one. When we keep hiding our feelings and needs, we're basically setting our relationships up for failure. Being vulnerable isn't just about opening up, it's about giving your relationship the chance to actually work. Now, remember how we talked about not having those clear relationship templates? Well, this means that monogamy isn't necessarily the automatic choice, the obvious choice for everyone. But here's where things get interesting. What's really driving our choice between an open or closed relationship? Sometimes it comes from an authentic desire for monogamy. But it would be interesting to ask ourselves if it's always what we really want deep inside, or is it coming from pressure to follow the traditional model, the strict monogamy that we see with usual straight couples? Is it coming from wanting our relationships to be seen as legitimate? So, the relationship model we show to the world and what we actually want or need isn't always the same thing. Some couples might be perfectly happy with traditional monogamy, and that's great. But others might want something different. Maybe more open, maybe with different boundaries. But they're afraid to even think about it because it doesn't fit that perfect gay couple image. What makes this even trickier is that as gay men, we're part of a community that often has its own set of expectations. On one side, you've got the pressure to be the respectable monogamous couple. On the other, you might feel pressure to be more open or experimental. And somewhere in the middle, you're trying to figure out what actually works for you and your partner. The hardest part? Having these conversations. How do you tell your partner you want something different? What if they react really badly or judge you? What if the community judges you? This fear of judgment often keeps couples stuck in relationship structures that aren't working for them. But here's the truth. There's no one-size-fits-all model. The healthiest relationships are the ones where both partners have the courage to have honest conversations about what they really want, even if it's scary, even if it means admitting what you agreed to at the beginning isn't working anymore. Relationships don't end because partners have different needs. They end because we keep those needs hidden until it's too late. Now let's talk about building a family. And I don't just mean kids. I'm talking about the whole picture of what family means when you're in a gay relationship. Because different visions of what this family means can actually break relationships apart if we don't handle these conversations right. When straight couples talk about their future, there's usually this unspoken understanding. Marriage, maybe kids, holidays with both families, the whole traditional package. But for us, every single piece of this needs to be figured out from scratch, and that's where many couples start falling apart. Take marriage, for example. One partner might dream about a big wedding and all the traditional symbols of commitment, while the other might see it as just a piece of paper or even have deep reservations about the whole concept of marriage. A lot of times, this is because of past family trauma. Now, when the different views stay unspoken, they create invisible cracks in the relationship. Then there's the question of kids, probably one of the biggest deal breakers in relationships. Do we want them? And if yes, adoption or surrogacy? Who's going to be the biological father? Or maybe one partner wants to be the cool uncle while the other dreams of being a dad. These aren't just simple yes or no decisions. They're fundamental life choices that can pull couples apart if they're not discussed openly. And here's what makes it even more challenging. There's this pressure to have it all figured out early. Like, you need to know every detail of your future together from day one. But here's what nobody tells you. While some big things do need to be discussed early, like whether you want kids or not at all, other things can develop as you grow together. The key is knowing which conversations can't wait. And yes, you can figure out the details of what family means to you over time, but those fundamental deal breakers, like one partner being dead set against marriage while the other sees it as non-negotiable, or completely opposite views about having kids, those need to be talked about before you're years into a relationship, because that's when the real cracks start to show. When you realize you've been avoiding the big conversations, hoping things would somehow work themselves out. The good news? When you do have these conversations openly, however scary they might seem, you're not just protecting against heartbreak in the future. You're actually creating space to build something unique together, something that truly works for both of you. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like and subscribe to my channel for more insights and guidance on gay dating, relationships, and personal growth. See you in the next video. Love you all.